Welcome to the Maryland Legislative Agenda for Women's 2024 Legislative Wrap-Up. My name is Michael Cohn, and I am MLAW's president. MLAW was created 30 years ago to harness the collective power of women to advocate for legislation that improves the lives of women and families in Maryland. To achieve that goal, MLAW was established as a statewide, nonpartisan coalition of individuals and organizations that produces and distributes an annual legislative agenda with proposed bills selected by our members. We coordinate with lead groups, advocate for the bills, and provide legislative alerts. As an ally in the fight against systemic racism, racial injustice, and discrimination, we also ensure that MLAW-supported legislation address issues that disproportionately affect women and communities of color. This year, 7 of 9 bills on MLAW's legislative agenda passed. This is a great success for MLAW and for all of you who connected with your legislators and let them know how important these bills were. With the addition of these 7 bills, MLAW has successfully supported 119 bills that have been passed by the General Assembly in the last 30 years. MLAW's democratic process for creating the annual legislative agenda begins when bills are presented at an annual fall conference by lead advocacy groups and legislators. Paid MLAW members then vote to select the priority bills that are included in the agenda. By joining MLAW, you can have a voice in what bills are selected. We ask individuals and organizations then to sign on to the agenda to affirm their support and demonstrate our collective power. I want to thank all of you who signed on this year. And remember, you don't have to be an MLAW member to sign on. During the legislative session, we introduce and disseminate the agenda document to all legislators as well as advocates throughout the state. We collaborate with lead groups and legislators. We write letters of support, provide testimony, and provide information, updates, and importantly, legislative alerts via email, our website, and Facebook page. Through this legislative wrap-up and our final report, we communicate what happened during the session, our successes and our disappointments, and what we expect in next year's session. We invite you to get involved, to join and become a voting member of MLAW, to learn about the important legislation and the MLAW legislative agenda, and to make your voices heard by contacting your legislators about legislation that will make a critical difference to women and families in Maryland. Tonight's wrap-up agenda and the final report were sent out in advance, but there's also a link in the chat for both of them. And the MLAW 2024 legislative final report is also available on our website, along with the agenda document. Now, I am pleased to introduce Catherine Hill, who has been selected as MLAW's first executive director. She is the former executive director of the Women's Caucus and brings years of knowledge and experience to her new position. She will be working in partnership with Jessica Morgan, the MLAW coordinator, who many of you know, and the MLAW board of directors to enhance the work of MLAW and to build on our 30 years of success. Catherine?
Thank you all very much. It is a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces. It's also really nice to see some new people. So as Michael said, you might recognize me from the Maryland Women's Caucus in the Maryland General Assembly. That was I served there for 4 years, and I'm looking forward to reconnecting with many of the legislators and with, of course, all of the allies and other women's groups that are involved. So those of you who don't know me, I've had a long history working in the women's movement. I worked as a director of research at the American Association of University Women. I also worked at the Institute for Women's Policy Research. And most recently, I've been teaching at the George Washington University in their Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies program. And one of my classes, we look sort of specifically at state law, and of course, Maryland's our big example. So I'll be assigning the students to take a nice hard look at what we're doing here at MLAW. And again, I'm just thrilled to be able to be part of this and take on this new role. So thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Catherine. Okay. Now, board member Jan Molino will introduce the lead group advocates and legislators who sponsored the MLAW agenda bills. Please submit questions on each bill through chat, and we'll take them after the presentation of each bill. Okay, Jan.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. This is going to be an exciting night. We're going to get started with the first bill, which is House Bill 496 and Senate Bill 758, Sexual Crimes Definition of Consent and Repeal of Force. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Lisa Jordan, Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault.
Jan, thank you so much. Again, I'm Lisa Jordan with the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault. I see that Senator Ariana Kelly is also on the Zoom here, and have to give her a shout out. This was her bill, along with Delegate Emily Shetty, and the lead advocate in the Judiciary Committee in terms of the delegates was Liz Embry. So all three of them really did an amazing job with the radical notion that sex without consent should be a crime. And so many of you may be thinking, well, geez, I thought that sex without consent was rape. And that's really the experience of survivors. But that was not Maryland's law. Maryland's law required more than that. Required a proof of force. It required a proof of threat of force. And so the bill that passed is eliminating those two requirements of force and threat of force. It is creating a definition of consent that will help the judges and people in general kind of understand consent, make it conform to what we already teach our kids, which is that you need to have consent before you have sex with someone, that what you wear is not consent, that whether you've had sex with someone before, that's not consent, and that you can withdraw consent at any time. So this sounds like such a great common sense bill, but it really was a huge lift. And I just have to say thank you to MLAW. You guys are amazing grassroots advocates. And I've been involved in many of those 119 bills over the past 30 years, and you really make a difference. Annapolis is it's a small town. And when you make phone calls, I walk into those offices and they say, hey, your people, they're calling. And so please know that those calls, those emails, those texts, they all make a difference. Before I pause for questions, I also just want to say welcome to Catherine Hill. She and I worked together for many, many years and many bills when she was at the Women's Caucus. And I'm just thrilled that MLAW has made this decision. So I want to send MCASA's welcome to our new MLAW Executive Director.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful.
All right, Jan, I see your mouth moving, but I don't hear any words.
No,
so I'm wondering if there are any questions.
Yeah, no, that's what I did ask. Yes, thank you. But I'm not seeing any questions yet, unless I'm missing them. Do you want to move on to the next bill?
Let's do that.
Okay.
The next bill is about sexual solicitation of a minor, which is already a crime. But one of the things that we're finding kind of in today's world is that technology is more and more a part of sexual assault, sexual exploitation, and sexual abuse. And we had a gap in our sexual solicitation of a minor crime. So you can't solicit a child to have certain types of sexual activity, but there was a gap, and we needed to add child pornography to the sexual solicitation of a minor law. And so that's what this bill did. Fairly straightforward, fairly simple. Again, our fabulous Ariana Kelly in the Senate sponsoring the bill, and Sandy Bartlett, who's vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee and is just really one of our strongest advocates for sexual assault survivors in this state. So we really, really appreciate all of her leadership. Although Senator Kelly is leaving the legislature for the Moore administration, Vice Chair Bartlett will continue to advocate. So this was a huge win. I have to also just give a shout out to our colleagues at the Maryland States Attorneys Association, and in particular to say that they've really rejuvenated their special victims committee, and that's led by Joyce King and Debbie Feinstein. They're doing a great job working in tandem with the people who are bringing the voices of survivors, both on the consent bill and also on the sexual solicitation of a minor adding pornography bill. So both good successes, moving the ball forward. We still have far to go, and perhaps some challenges starting this fall, but we are all going to work together to meet them all.
Thank you so much. I think I just saw one question. What was I'm sorry, what is the question?
I believe that's what is the bill number?
Bill
and so
number.
for the
Yes,
consent bill, the consent bill, it's House Bill 496. For the sexual solicitation of a minor bill, it's House Bill 99.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. And you're getting a lot of accolades here in the chat room, so you should take a look at that too. Thank you. The second bill that she mentioned was House Bill 99 and Senate Bill 113 in regards to the sexual solicitation of a minor through child pornography. So we're going to jump around a little bit here tonight. Melanie Shapiro is going to come on next. And Melanie, both of her bills did not pass, and we are moving her up. She has much on her plate tonight. So let me introduce House Bill 869, Senate Bill 753 on public safety, firearm background checks, victim notification, and the Maryland State Police Gun Center. Let me introduce Melanie Shapiro.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I apologize. I'm stepping out of a meeting to participate in tonight with MLAW. Thank you all so much for your advocacy. Those of you who are on the Zoom that made phone calls, emails. I unfortunately do have the two bills on the agenda that did not pass, neither of which was in principle, both of which came with large fiscal notes. So HB 869, SB 753, which was a firearm background check victim notification, and the Maryland State Police Gun Center. It was sponsored by Delegate Bartlett in the House and Senator Hedelman in the Senate. And it would have required, the bill as originally drafted, would have required the state police to notify local law enforcement if there was an individual who is a prohibited person that tried to legally purchase a firearm. What the bill, we worked very closely with the state police to get the bill in language that was consistent with how their laws operated, and narrowed it to if there was a prohibited person pursuant to a final order of protection, and to ensure that the victim was notified as well, whether there was a federal denial or a state denial. Unfortunately, there is technology that needs to be created, and that comes with a tag of a little bit over $650,000. And so we are in a position now where we have the language that works for the state police in terms of their operations, and we await a Supreme Court decision on protective orders and firearms, the Rahimi decision, and look forward to coming back next year with this legislation as well as other firearm legislation to ensure that prohibited persons and domestic violence victims and survivors are protected from firearms.
Thank you. And the second bill is the House Bill 482 and the Senate Bill 398, which is the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board, Victims of Non-Fatal Strangulation. Tell us about that.
Sure, thank you so much. So that was sponsored by Delegate Simpson and Senator Folden, and I believe I may have seen Delegate Simpson on this Zoom. Excellent bill sponsors who really advocated strongly for this bill. It was receiving a lot of attention. This bill would require for forensic exams for non-fatal strangulation to be paid through the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board. There are state dollars that go to a special unit called SARU, the Sexual Assault Reimbursement Unit, that would provide direct reimbursement for those forensic exams. It does not cover a non-fatal strangulation, though, that does not co-occur with a sexual assault. So we wanted to expand that. Again, unfortunately, the estimated expense was a minimum of $500,000. Just for the compensation, there's need for additional staff as well. And so it was on a voting list in JPR. Delegate Simpson and Senator Folden worked tirelessly to try and come up with solutions to get portions of the bill passed. Unfortunately, that did not happen this year. I did want to call out the States Attorneys Association as well, who were tremendous partners in this legislative effort. And we anticipate being back next year with the same legislation.
Okay, well, we're going to look forward to that. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time with us tonight. We appreciate it. Okay, up next is House Joint Resolution 1 and the Senate Joint Resolution. The bill is affirming the Federal Equal Rights Amendment with Judy Carbone from Maryland Now. Hi, Judy.
Hello, I'm Judy Carbone. Actually, I'm with AAUW Maryland. AAUW Maryland and Maryland Now are lead partner organizations in Marin. The Marin is the Maryland Equal Rights Action Network, along with Free State Justice and the Montgomery County Democratic Women. Those were our lead organizations. But Marin has 37 organizations, many of which I believe are here tonight. Or some of which anyway, that work tirelessly to try to get the resolution passed to reaffirm the Equal Rights Amendment. So many people believe that the Equal Rights Amendment is already passed or is not needed. Both of those are not true. And so Marin, in March of this year, and its 37 sponsoring organizations wrote a letter to the legislature asking for a resolution to reaffirm the Equal Rights Amendment and asked the federal government to finally recognize the amendment as the 28th Amendment. It has already met Article 5 requirements in the U.S. Constitution and is being stymied, so to speak, by an arbitrary deadline that was placed in the 70s and 80s. So we have been pushing nationally to try to get that arbitrary deadline removed and the amendment finally recognized. The strategy of asking the states that have already ratified the Equal Rights Amendment to reaffirm their support is one that had been worked on and had resulted in already 8 other states across the nation in doing reaffirming resolutions. So we asked the state legislature in Maryland to do the same. We asked for sponsors, and Delegate Edith Patterson and Leslie Lopez immediately jumped on board and were quick to support the HJ1 resolution, as was in the Senate, Senator Ariana Kelly. Hello, Senator Kelly, who definitely was a strong and avid supporter. So we, in the end, it was Senate Joint Resolution 1 that finally went over the finish line, starting with bipartisan support in the Senate committee, including my own senator here in D1, Senator Mike McKay. It then passed on the Senate floor with also bipartisan support. And on the last Saturday before Sine Die, it went to the House floor finally for final reading. And after some attempted amendments and some very interesting discussion, a little contentious, it passed with bipartisan support. So we were just overjoyed. The resolution was not a new thing. I'm also a board member of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and we found evidence that back in the 60s, there was already a resolution asking the federal government to support the ERA. So this was, again, a second one, and we were thrilled to be able to join the other states who have reaffirmed and are so grateful to our legislative supporters. The work's not done on the federal level, but the support of Maryland in reaffirming the Equal Rights Amendment will be one more reason to get it done. And we do believe that this year we are hoping that the ERA, after 101 years of fighting for it, ridiculous 101 years, we will finally get it done. We have enough votes in the Senate, hopefully, to pass the bills that will take away the deadline and confirm it as the 28th Amendment. We're just waiting for a few more votes in the House on those bills, but we are confident with Senator Cardin's avid support here in Maryland that will happen in Congress. So please keep your fingers crossed and stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any questions? Again, please put them in the chat. I don't see any right now. So we're going to move along and we're going to go to House Bill 39 and the Senate Bill 197 for residential services agencies reimbursement, personal assistance services, which originally was the Home Care Workers' Rights Act of 2024, correct? And so
That's
let me introduce David Rodden with the Public Justice Center.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight and so grateful for MLAW's support on this bill. This is an issue that I, along with advocates at the National Domestic Workers Alliance and 1199 SEIU, consumer advocates with AARP, Maryland, Alzheimer's Association, and others have been working on for years. And we got it done this year with MLAW's support. So happy and grateful. What this bill does is it makes sure that when home care workers whose work is funded by the state, funded by Medicaid, when the state is essentially paying their wages through private home care agencies, those workers' rights are respected, and we're not funding the law breaking of having workers stripped out of the social safety net when they're misclassified as independent contractors, because so much of the social safety net depends on a worker being properly classified as an employee. Even rights so basic as minimum wage and overtime, not to mention workers' compensation if you're injured on the job, unemployment insurance if you lose your job through no fault of your own, earned sick and safe leave. All of these things depend on being classified as an employee. And unfortunately in Maryland, for far too long, many for-profit home care agencies have been accepting these public dollars, Medicaid dollars, and profiting by misclassifying workers as independent contractors. So this bill will end that once and for all, prevent the problem before it happens to begin with by just saying the state will only reimburse the care if it's provided by a worker who's properly classified as an employee. So it will take effect on January 1st, 2026, which gives home care agencies that are not currently in compliance time to get in compliance. And when that happens, it'll improve job quality for the thousands of workers, 90% of whom are women, 70% of whom are Black, about 48% of whom are immigrants. It'll correct this misclassification, bring them into the social safety net. It'll make all home care agencies compete on the same level playing field without helping the law-breaking agencies vis-a-vis the agencies that are respecting workers' rights. So it really is sort of a rising tide lifts all boats situation. Is going to help everyone, as well as consumers, by improving quality of care, continuity of care, and helping Maryland better prepare itself to be an age-ready state, as they say. So I'll just close again by saying thank you all so much. Really, really grateful. And it's been a real privilege to work with you all.
Well, thank you very much for all of your hard work. This is good stuff. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next bill, which is House Bill 1091, and the Senate Bill is 975 on public safety, reproductive health care, clinic security grant program. So this is supporting Reproductive Health Care Clinics Act. And again, this is substituting for another bill on abortion care access grant program. And let me introduce Jennifer Mercer with Pro-Choice Maryland. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Excuse me, and good evening, everybody. So my name is Jennifer Mercer. I am a co-chair of the Policy and Endorsement Committee of Pro-Choice Maryland 501c4. So as you all may recall, we had started out with a little bit of a different idea about how to protect clinics, specifically in regard to a buffer zone around clinics within which anti-choice protesters would not be allowed to physically intimidate patients, providers, volunteers, other folks trying to access the clinic. We do share the concerns of many advocates regarding the uptick in anti-choice violence at clinics, as we know that the legal right to abortion has to be accessible or else it doesn't really mean anything. House Bill 1412, the original bill, was filed sort of late-ish. It was running up against the filing deadline, and its contents were not exactly what we had expected. And we learned in conversations with the sponsoring delegates' staff that the bill had been changed pretty substantially due to feedback from other advocates regarding the enforceability of the bill and what would be needed to prepare for the legal challenges that we knew would arise. Obviously we are receptive to such feedback. We wish we would have been kept in the loop, but of course we remain supportive, as our goal is to support our clinic partners any way that we can. So what happened was that House Bill 1412 morphed into a grant program using funds from the Affordable Care Act. So this is not something that is well known, but the Affordable Care Act, the federal legislation that passed back in 2010, requires insurance companies to use a segregated account for funds related to premiums paid for abortion care. It's something that obviously Republicans in Congress were enforcing as sort of an anti-choice measure, but what it also means, though, is that there is this pot of funds available from this segregated account to support abortion access. And so the idea was that these funds would be used by the state to support security upgrades at clinic facilities and also as financial assistance for patients who needed it to access care. Parallel to this was House Bill 1091, which is also Senate Bill 975, which established a similar grant program with similar goals regarding clinic security, but it used state funds to do that. House Bill 1412, and I realize this is a little confusing, I'm sorry, but House Bill 1412, using the Affordable Care Act funds, there was some question from the Attorney General's office as to whether those funds delegated for abortion care could be used for capital improvements at abortion clinics as opposed to direct abortion care services, which ultimately I think was the sort of logjam that hemmed up House Bill 1412. However, Senate Bill 975, which is the one that ultimately passed, did not have the same problems with respect to that because the funds came from the state. As written originally, House Bill 1091 provided for the grant program to be administered through GoCap, and we received feedback from our clinic partners that they didn't want it to be administered through GoCap because GoCap may have more political exposure than, say, the Department of Health. And there's no way for us to know what a future gubernatorial administration could do if perhaps one were to be elected that was not as supportive of abortion rights as the Moore administration. And additionally, it feels appropriate for the Department of Health to administer this program because abortion care is health care. So as a result, we advocated that the bill be amended to replace GoCap as the administrator with the Department of Health, which was accepted. We also wanted to be sure that anti-choice crisis pregnancy centers, which you may be familiar with, they often do everything that they can to look like abortion clinics and confuse patients, but once inside, patients are subjected to anti-choice misinformation, emotional manipulation regarding not going through with an abortion, that sort of thing. So we wanted to make sure that no funds would be going to these places as well. So the language specifies that it's only for clinics that provide legally protected health care, which is to say abortion. We are thrilled at the success of this bill, and we're hopeful that it will be useful to our clinic partners and to patients from Maryland and from beyond Maryland. One thing that's been sort of salient throughout this entire process is that we are relatively new in the advocacy space, and so we've learned a lot of lessons from this experience. We really value our relationship with our clinic partners, and we intend to use what we've learned to further our goals of making abortion accessible for everybody. Our future advocacy could involve our original idea or perhaps grant funds for direct patient access, which Senate Bill 975 unfortunately doesn't have. It's only for the capital improvements. But if something were to be resurrected in the vein of House Bill 1412 using the Affordable Care Act funds, I'm certainly interested in determining how it may be possible to use those funds to support financial assistance for patients in need. We're hopeful for the future and we appreciate your support.
So Jennifer, we do have a question from Senator Kelly, and she wants to know, what is the plan for getting the Clinic Protection Fund actually funded since there's no money allocated in this bill?
So the bill contains a discretionary language, some discretionary language about how the governor may allocate $50,000 starting in fiscal 26 towards this bill. I think it may be something where sustained advocacy is needed to make sure that that gets in there. This is something obviously that we're going to be watching and we're committed to doing, and we certainly want to make sure that that happens. That's what makes sense to me right now. I'm obviously open to learning more and other ideas as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We appreciate it. We're going to move on. We only have 2 bills left. And our next bill is House Bill 649, Senate Bill 525. And it is the Labor Employment Equal Pay for Equal Work Wage Range Transparency Bill. And this is Delegate Jennifer White Holland. And welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jan. Do appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to share this bill, and my gratitude to Senator Kelly, who served as the Senate bill sponsor for SB 525, who was on this call, and again, just all of the advocates in MLAW for supporting this bill. This was a great success for us, as this bill was a reintroduction that requires employers to put salary or wage ranges on all job postings. And I again applaud the outstanding work that Delegate Pam Queen did last year in serving as the lead sponsor for this bill. But this was the year where we got it across the finish line, and I applaud all of the work that she did, which led to our success this year. Again, I would also like to thank our lead organizing partners with the Maryland Center for Economic Policy, and I see Kaylee on the call as well, and the National Women's Law Center and the Executive Alliance. So I appreciate all of the organizations and advocates who rallied around us to move this forward. We had a wonderful hearing, and this bill also was presented alongside and in support of the Maryland Department of Labor. So it was our pleasure to have Secretary Portia Wu to serve on our panel in the House, along with the Labor Commissioner Divick, and as well as a small business owner, and Andrea Johnson from the National Women's Law Center. And so we had a great panel and wonderful testimony that was kept short and sweet, just the way that Economic Matters Committee likes it. And we were very effective and efficient in the various questions that were raised. Now, while the Economic Matters Committee might have amended the bill, the crux and the intent of the bill still remains. That, again, will take effect October 1st of this year. That will require all employers in the state of Maryland to include this information, giving women in the workplace an opportunity, as seeing this as a tool to address the wage gap that we know, where Maryland full-time women who work full-time in Maryland earn 85 cents on the dollar. And when we look at the amount of losses over a career of work, a lifetime career of work, especially for Black women, it now amasses to over $1 million. And so when we think about wage range transparency, it really is an opportunity and a tool that can be used to really close this gap. And so we're looking forward to seeing how this works. It is a strong bill, but we recognize that there are always opportunities to further strengthen it in the future. And so there is compliance in it using the current Department of Labor current compliance structure that is embedded in the bill. But private right of action was removed. And so I think for the future, if there is ever any interest and revisiting this, that might be one particular area. But overall, I think that we are very pleased with the outcomes of this bill, and looking forward to working further with the Women's Caucus, as this was one of their legislative priorities, and we received support from the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland in moving this forward. So looking forward to working with you and others on other bills related to this. I would also mention, and I would be remiss in mentioning, that on Equal Pay Day, Senator Kelly and myself had an opportunity to participate in the Equal Pay Day press conference, where Lieutenant Governor Miller, along with Secretary Portia Wu and community leaders, had an opportunity to elevate the Equal Pay Day report to see how the state of Maryland, along with other localities, are doing when it comes to equal pay. In the chat, I will include the link to the press release along with the report that is embedded in this particular press release. So you'll have an opportunity to look at that report. Again, wage range transparency is a one tool, but we know that there are many other ways for us to address this larger wage gap. Gender wage gap. So I'll stop there to see if there are any questions, but it certainly was a pleasure to work with Senator Kelly on this. We started early in the process, and it was just really wonderful to work with all stakeholders to address the concerns from last year and to make sure that we presented a bill that we thought would make it through, knowing that that the Economic Matters Committee and respective subcommittee would take another look and make further changes possibly. So again, excellent effort by all, and I'm just overjoyed that the bill has now officially been signed into law on April 25th by Governor Moore. And again, it will take effect on October 1st of this year.
Wow, congratulations on that great work. And our last bill, and I don't think we have any questions though. Our very last bill is House Bill 691 and Senate Bill 119, which is legally protected healthcare and gender affirming treatment, with Scott Tiffin out of the office of Senator Clarence Lamb. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Scott, and I'm with Senator Clarence Lamb's office. Just here to talk briefly about the legally protected healthcare bill from this past session. Folks may be aware it did pass. We're still waiting for the governor to sign it, but that should be totally not a problem. And just as a reminder from the MLAW conference, this is a fairly simple bill. It just took the abortion protections that were created last year, some of the shielding protections created by the General Assembly last year, and just added gender affirming care to the definition of legally protected care. So these are things like protecting physicians and nurses and PAs from discipline for providing legally protected care, preventing courts from entertaining lawsuits from out of state over this care, preventing extradition. There's a few other protections, but essentially same protections that were provided to abortion last year will automatically provided to gender affirming care. So we're very happy to see it pass. Folks may have seen there's actually an ongoing legal battle between Planned Parenthood Missouri and their attorney general over the attorney general trying to access gender affirming care records that Planned Parenthood holds. And I think that's another thing we were always worried about, is that if we have gaps in our abortion statute, that out-of-state attorney generals may use that to kind of get around our protections and go after some of these abortion providers, in addition to going after gender affirming care providers. So happy to see it pass, and there's probably still ongoing advocacy to address some other issues. We've heard from folks about potential concerns in the child custody space, interstate kind of child custody issues, and whether we need to maybe add some extra protections to some of those issues. But very happy to see this bill pass and really appreciate MLAW's support.
Well, we have one question, so don't go away yet. Are volunteers with reproductive justice organizations protected, as in people who provide rides to and from clinics? How are they protected?
Yes. So I didn't have the definition up right in front of me, unfortunately. But the way that it was defined, essentially, it's like anything that is like connected to the provision of care is protected. It has all the protections. So it's not just the patient, not just the doctor. It's any service or even like supplies or things that are related to the provision of that care. So if you are, driving a friend, to get this care, then that would also be protected as well. Those are probably more the criminal protections that will be the most relevant to you, because most likely you don't have a license. It'll be at jeopardy in that context. But yes, it'd be protected.
Oh, thank you. Do we have any more questions? If not, I want to thank you, Scott, so much. And I want to thank everybody who presented tonight. Thank you very much. And we're going to move right on. I'm going to hand this back to Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, those were great presentations. I was taking notes, so I took myself off camera so that I could quickly write down all this good information. Okay. So I'd like to now turn it over to board member Dr. Stephanie Magenzi, who will invite you to raise a glass to toast our 2024 success.
Good evening, everyone. As we pause to celebrate the legislative wins during the 2024 session of the General Assembly and look to the future, where we all pledge to continue to fight with and for Maryland women and families, join me in raising a glass in appreciation for every person who wrote, called, protested, and otherwise raised their voice. And let us never forget that every moment is an organizing opportunity, every person a potential activist, every minute a chance to change the world. Words by Dolores Huerta, who taught us and showed us through her work for farm workers exactly what's possible when we work together. Cheers to MLAW.
Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, now board member Lynn Gilbert will tell you how to get involved in MLAW.
Thank you and good evening. Good evening, everyone. I think, is that me making noise? Background. Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, thank you all for participating this evening and throughout the year. As we know, legislative issues don't stop. They are all year. There will always be something out there to spark a discussion. And MLAW is one of those ways to be part of the conversation. So if you find yourself feeling passionate about a cause, or you're a member of an organization or part of a community that is feeling that something needs to change, then you are in the right place. If you see something, say something. If you feel something, come to MLAW. If you want to help change something or learn more about this whole process, come to MLAW. I'm going to age myself right now, but how many of you out there can remember that old Schoolhouse Rock song, I'm Just a Bill? I'm not going to sing it, but I know some of you out there know what I'm talking about. But we have all learned how important that just a bill is. These are labors of love for dedicated advocates in this state. This is about having a voice and a pathway to a seat at the table with that bill. MLAW gives you a voice and a vote on legislative issues that are impacting women and families. Your membership supports our successful advocacy efforts and our legislative events that we've been doing for 30 years with the successful passage of 119 bills. And some of the benefits of paid membership include voting to select the bills that are included in the annual agenda document, getting information about the legislation, receiving alerts during the session and legislative outcomes, receiving the information about the annual conference, the legislative briefing, the wrap-up, which you're here on tonight, and voting for MLAW board members. There is going to be a link in the chat, the application, or you can go to our website and you can see the history of what MLAW has done and all of the successful efforts that we've stood behind. And you can join as an individual member or your organization is joined as well. And so thank you to all who are members, and your continued membership with those renewals are appreciated. So again, thank you everyone for your participation, and to the speakers and everyone who helped stand with MLAW. And I will turn that back over to Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. That was great. I want to thank you all for participating in tonight's wrap-up. We hope to see you in November at MLAW's annual Fall Legislative Conference. And we now have a date. That is Saturday, November 23rd. We'll be at the Meeting House in Columbia, which is going to be a great location for us. This is also MLAW's 30th anniversary year. So please look for more information to come and some of the exciting things we're going to do to celebrate our 30th anniversary. So thank you all for coming tonight, and I hope to see you in November.